This whole fiasco began with a single announcement that should have been a celebration, a new take on one of the most legendary animated films of all time. Nobody expected it to ignite a storm so intense that even Disney executives would scramble to contain it. But that's exactly what happened when news broke that a young actress named Rachel Zgler had been cast as the iconic character in a modern reimagining. The moment she opened her mouth about outdated themes, fans felt a nerve snap. Love or hate the original film, it's woven into pop culture so deeply that any attempt to change it runs the risk of massive backlash. And once that backlash snowballed, there was no stopping it. At first, Rachel was seen as a rising star who would bring fresh energy to a classic tale. That was the plan, anyway. People were intrigued. This wasn't just about redoing a beloved story, it was about updating it for a new generation. But when she actually started talking about the original animated film, it didn't go over well. She called it old-fashioned, hinted that the original storyline was basically irrelevant for modern audiences, and suggested the entire film was just about some guy stalking a helpless girl in the woods. Fans of the classic story immediately fired back, saying she seemed to miss the nuances of a fairy tale that's been cherished for decades. What sounded like an innocent opinion quickly turned into a powder keg. Some felt Rachel was trashing a piece of cinematic history and erasing the memories people held dear. Others said she was doing what any reboot star would do, pointing out that times have changed and a new approach is necessary. But the more she defended her modern viewpoint, the more her words were twisted into clickbait headlines. Phrases like outdated nonsense and out-of-touch fanbase circulated on social media, and everyone from hardcore Disney fans to casual viewers began piling on. That's when the rumors started: alleged conflict with the top brass at the studio, rumored spats with her co-star, and talk of an on-set atmosphere so tense you could cut it with a knife. Things escalated quickly. Disney executives saw that each new interview caused more public outcry. Instead of letting Rachel speak freely, they supposedly tried to limit her appearances, wanting to keep the controversy from blowing up further. The internet, of course, smelled blood in the water. Whenever Rachel did speak, it seemed to pour gasoline on the fire. She tried to clarify her thoughts on the original animated film, but the damage was done. Screen grabs of her face, quotes taken out of context, these elements flooded social media, painting her as the villain of a movie that hadn't even hit theaters yet. Meanwhile, the tension with co-star Galadoo became a juicy subplot. One awkward red carpet moment, where they seemed to avoid each other, sparked endless rumors about behind-the-scenes drama. Did they have creative differences? Did they not see eye to eye about how the remake should tackle this age-old story? Insiders whispered that Rachel was on a crusade to modernize every aspect of the narrative, while Galadoo wanted to stick closer to some original elements. True or not, gossip about the two stars clashing took on a life of its own, feeding the narrative that the entire production was spinning out of control. Bob Iger, known for dealing with corporate messes in a cool, collected way, suddenly looked like he was in a bind. The remake was already under a microscope because it touched a cherished legacy. Fans had put up with reboots for years, maybe even decades, but it felt like the studio was meddling too much this time around. People asked whether Disney had lost the original film's magic by trying so hard to please modern audiences. Some said yes, others said no, but the one thing everyone agreed on was that the drama was overshadowing the film itself. If a reboot sparks more controversy than excitement, that's not exactly what the studio wants. Then South Park stepped into the fray and blew the situation to a whole new level. In true South Park fashion, they didn't just poke fun at one aspect of the scandal. They went all in, mercilessly roasting Rachel, the film's premise, the studio executives, and even longtime industry figures whose names became synonymous with questionable creative decisions. The parody captured Rachel as a rampaging star who wouldn't stop ranting about how the original movie was so passé. She demanded everyone acknowledge her updated version as the only story that mattered. The comedic exaggeration was close enough to reality to make people wonder if the show had insider info. The ripple effect of that parody was massive. On social media, memes sprang up overnight, featuring cartoon versions of Rachel stomping around, telling everyone to forget the old story forever. Influencers and podcasters latched onto the comedic goldmine, dissecting every frame of the South Park segment to see what was real, what was satirical, and what it said about Hollywood's current state. The show was a perfect reflection of a growing sentiment. Maybe these endless reboots have gone too far. Maybe the audience is tired of having treasured stories retooled for the sake of ticking all the modern boxes, only to end up with something that feels neither new nor nostalgic. Fans of the original film, some of whom were willing to give a reboot the benefit of the doubt, dug their heels in even more. They felt vindicated. If South Park was roasting this fiasco, it meant the meltdown had reached the mainstream. Online petitions circulated, calling for Disney to show respect to classics and drop any attempts at heavy-handed changes. People questioned the wisdom of taking a fairy tale known for its symbolism and moral lessons and turning it into an example of hypermodern agendas. Debate raged about what a modern fairy tale should look like and whether there was a way to strike a balance between the old and the new. Amid it all, Rachel's every public word became an internet event. The more the spotlight turned on Rachel, the more speculation arose that she was either being muzzled by the studio or fighting them behind the scenes. Some insisted she was refusing to tone down her opinions because she genuinely believed in a progressive take on the classic. Others argued she was in panic mode, overwhelmed by negative feedback she never saw coming. Still others believed she was stuck in a contract that forced her to keep promoting a film she no longer had faith in. No matter the real story, fans devoured every rumor as if it were the absolute truth. The co-star drama didn't help. Galadoo, known for her strong screen presence and typically gracious public persona, remained conspicuously quiet about Rachel's remarks. Whenever she did comment on the film, she stuck to safe territory, praising the set design, complimenting the creative team, or talking about how excited she was to portray a famous Disney villain. She never seemed to address the swirl of negativity that was increasingly anchored to her counterpart. This made fans suspicious. Either they had a genuine rift and were trying not to fan the flames, or they were following a studio directive to compartmentalize the controversy. Either way, their awkward award show interactions fueled tabloid headlines. While all of this was going on, Disney had other headaches. Marvel's momentum was slowing, a new Daredevil series was facing big questions, and Bob Iger was busy trying to right the ship. Having one more fiasco to handle, especially attached to something as legendary as a 1937 animated film, felt like a pile-on. Every time the film surfaced in the media, executives seemed to cringe, wondering if it would blow up again. It often did. After a while, fans started asking if the movie should just get shelved until cooler heads prevailed. Rachel, for her part, had sporadic social media posts that some people interpreted as cryptic jabs at her critics. Some said she was meltdown-level furious about the backlash, particularly the South Park parody, which painted her as the biggest punchline in the fiasco. Others said she'd laugh it off privately but felt muzzled by the studio from responding publicly. Meanwhile, every time she walked a red carpet or posed for a photographer, tabloids dissected her body language, analyzing whether her smile was genuine or if there was tension in her eyes. It got to the point where the actual content of the new movie, its storyline, songs, or updated moral, barely got mentioned. Reports circulated that promotional interviews were being cancelled left and right. Officially, the reasons were labeled as scheduling conflicts or last-minute changes. Unofficially, insiders claimed Disney worried that any unscripted moment might become the next viral fiasco. The press, of course, saw this as a potential meltdown. Any attempt to hide the star from the public was interpreted as a sign that the studio was losing faith in her ability to keep the narrative positive. As a result, each cancelled appearance became its own mini-scandal, fueling more speculation about how dire the situation really was. Then, out of nowhere, a rumor started that certain scenes from the film were being scrapped or reshot in a frantic attempt to minimize controversies. Some insiders said the test screenings were not going well, either. The new approach apparently didn't resonate with audiences the way the creative team hoped. They wanted a modern story that also kept the fairy tale magic, but balancing these two sides proved trickier than expected. If viewers went in expecting a sweet, romantic fantasy and ended up with a lecture on social issues, would they leave the theater satisfied or frustrated? Around the same time, the studio found itself under fire for how it was handling the dwarfs, or lack thereof. Early glimpses suggested the classical dwarfs were replaced by random magical creatures or a mixed group that didn't resemble the original 7 dwarfs. People who grew up loving the comedic personalities from the original were stunned to see major changes, while supporters argued that times have changed and these characters needed a modern twist. Either way, it felt like a game of whack-a-mole. Every time the production tried to avoid a controversy, a new one popped up. The dwarfs got overshadowed by Rachel's remarks, which in turn got overshadowed by the alleged co-star drama, until the South Park parody overshadowed everything else. As word got out that Rachel was upset about the parody, people on social media began debating, Was it fair game or a low blow? Some believed South Park was just being South Park. This is what they do, and everybody is a target if they're making headlines. Others said the show was punching down on a young actress who was already getting skewered by fans. Regardless, the moment a major comedic franchise like South Park turned the fiasco into a punchline, it entered a pop culture hall of fame for controversies. Suddenly, this wasn't just another reboot fiasco. It was the reboot fiasco, the meltdown that might define the year. Disney's silence only fueled conspiracies. Why wasn't the studio defending Rachel? Why weren't they clarifying the changes to the story? Fans speculated that Disney was in damage control mode, holding endless private meetings, looking at polls or focus group data, and trying to decide if they could salvage this film. Leaked tidbits said the movie's final act had been completely overhauled to make it less preachy, though nobody outside the production knew what that meant exactly. When official channels remained quiet, the rumor mill took over, generating even more wild theories about how production was going. Across the internet, people questioned whether the film could overcome such a tidal wave of negativity. Sometimes, if a film is good enough, it can drown out all the background noise once audiences finally see it. But the bigger the meltdown, the harder it becomes to shift focus back to the story. Critics pointed out that this controversy overshadowed the actual artistry of the sets, the costumes, and the special effects. Others said maybe that was the problem. If you're doing a remake, you need to rely on nostalgia for the original, and if you mock the original too openly, you alienate the very audience who might show up for opening weekend. For Rachel, the controversy didn't just risk one movie role, it risked how the industry views her going forward. Casting directors might think twice before attaching someone whose opinions invite this level of chaos. Then again, Hollywood can be fickle and quick to forgive if a star's presence can sell tickets. If the movie hits big at the box office, people might retroactively call her a genius for being so outspoken. If it tanks, she could end up shouldering more than her fair share of blame, given how the public meltdown centered on her words. What truly lit the final spark, according to some insiders, was the assumption that the new version of the story had an underlying mission: to fix society through a reimagined fairy tale. While that might be a noble goal in theory, audiences can sense when a film is preaching instead of entertaining. South Park capitalized on this idea, showing cartoon Rachel ignoring the story's fantasy roots, demanding everyone see it as a modern statement, and overshadowing every other element in the process. The comedic angle was that her fictional meltdown in the cartoon felt too similar to what people had seen in real-life interviews. Fans who didn't care about the old movie or about reboots in general found themselves sucked into the spectacle. News anchors, entertainment websites, and YouTubers devoted entire segments to the meltdown. In-depth commentary videos dissected each rumor. Everyone had an opinion about how the film should handle the prince, the dwarfs, the iconic apple scene, and whether updating a classic is worth it if you alienate its biggest supporters. The more people talked, the more the meltdown overshadowed the reason for the meltdown in the first place: a movie that was supposed to be a whimsical tribute to a legendary fairy tale. Day by day, the online narrative kept shifting. 1 minute, it was about Rachel's alleged frustration with Bob Iger's leadership. The next, it was about a cameo that might get cut or replaced, with rumors swirling that the studio was excising anything that tested poorly. Another day, it was about the possibility that the entire release might get pushed back to avoid direct competition with another major film. Each fresh rumor kept the drama alive and steered attention away from the creative merits, or lack thereof, of the new take. Eventually, it reached a point where pop culture observers started asking bigger questions. Are we tired of reboots? Is Hollywood so out of ideas that it keeps recycling classic stories in ways that upset original fans? Should we blame the audience for resisting change, or blame studios for forcing too many changes? And what about the actors caught in the middle? Are they spokespeople for the studio's agenda, or do they have a say in how these beloved tales are reinvented? Rachel's interviews suggested she believed wholeheartedly in an updated, more progressive storyline. But from the outside looking in, it was hard to tell how much input she truly had versus how much was corporate decision-making she was just told to sell. If there was any silver lining, it was that controversy often translates into publicity. People who had no interest in yet another Disney remake suddenly wanted to see how big of a train wreck it might be. Or maybe they wanted to see if the film would prove everyone wrong and deliver a fresh experience that overcame the negativity. The film's success or failure might hinge on whether the final product can stand on its own. But critics warned that no matter how good a reboot might be, If the star's reputation is in tatters and the fanbase is split, there's an uphill battle to win hearts and minds. Meanwhile, in typical South Park fashion, once they move on, they move on. They'll pick a new target, a fresh scandal to lampoon, and the Rachel Zgler parody will settle into the show's comedic canon. But for Rachel, Disney, and everyone else involved in the movie, the consequences linger. Her portrayal in that parody is etched into public memory. For some fans, that's all they'll think about every time her name comes up. Even if she recovers, takes on new roles, and distances herself from this fiasco, images from that cartoon meltdown will circulate online for years to come. The question remains, can a film overshadow the negativity swirling around it? Some classic stories have proven bulletproof to controversy, while others never quite bounce back. This one is complicated by the fact that the 1937 original was not just any movie, it was a pioneering achievement that defined Disney's legacy. When you tinker with something that foundational, you're playing with cultural dynamite. Combine that with modern expectations for inclusivity and updated storytelling, plus a star who publicly criticizes the cherished old version, and you get a perfect storm. Still, some fans point out that we should wait to see the movie before passing final judgment. Maybe the final cut will strike the right balance, respecting the original while introducing timely themes. Maybe the comedic elements or the music will be so captivating that audiences can forgive any pre-release drama. Or maybe the meltdown will overshadow everything, turning off potential viewers before they even consider buying a ticket. Early test screenings could be great or terrible. We've only heard rumors. In the end, the box office might be the final judge. Rachel's future hangs in the balance. If the film bombs, critics will say her negative comments drove away fans. If it's a smash hit, others might claim the controversy was a genius PR move. She could emerge as a boundary-pushing talent who dared to speak her mind, or she could be labeled as the actress who single-handedly sank an iconic reboot. Hollywood is known for rewriting narratives, and sometimes a star can bounce back even after a major scandal. But this fiasco feels bigger than just one person. It's about an entire industry pushing boundaries and testing how far they can go before the audience pushes back. Some in the entertainment world speculate that Snow White 2025 might become a cautionary tale for future reboots. It's a warning about what happens when you try to drastically reshape a well-loved story without addressing the emotional attachment fans have to the original. If you're going to challenge tradition, you need a strategy that doesn't alienate everyone who adored the story in the first place. Otherwise, you end up with a meltdown so big that even a satirical TV show can't resist turning it into a punchline. As of now, the film's release date looms like a ticking clock. Each leak, each rumor, each cancelled appearance only adds to the drama. Whether Disney can keep all the cracks from widening is anyone's guess. Meanwhile, fans keep refreshing social media for the next glimpse of chaos, and news outlets wait for a statement, any statement, that might clarify the film's direction. But in an age where every controversy can become a meme, controlling the narrative is nearly impossible. Instead, the meltdown just keeps rolling, fueled by fan frustration, comedic gold, and a star who ended up in the crossfire of an iconic story's legacy. Will the final version of this remake transform hearts and minds? Or will it forever be known as the project that soared too close to the sun, fried its wings, and plummeted under the weight of modern controversy? The final outcome remains a mystery. Yet one thing is clear, no one will forget this saga anytime soon. From Rachel's ill-received comments to the rumored set drama, from the studio's panicked media lockdown to the South Park roast heard round the internet, this meltdown has made history. All that's left now is to see if the movie can rise from the ashes of the drama and give audiences something they never knew they needed. In the end, the fiasco begs a question bigger than just one actress or one classic story. Where does the balance lie between honoring tradition and embracing innovation? Audiences adore a familiar tale but also crave something new. There's a line between updating a legend and losing its essence, and this entire meltdown might be the best example of what happens when a production crosses that line without a clear plan. Millions of eyes will be watching the box office results, the reviews, and the fan reactions. If the film does manage to enchant viewers despite the controversies, it might prove that no scandal is too big to overcome. But if it stumbles, critics will point to this meltdown as the reason reboots can't always reinvent the wheel. So here we are, waiting to see if Snow White 2025 can pull off a fairy tale miracle or if it's destined to go down as one of Disney's most notorious missteps. The backlash has been relentless, the rumors relentless, and the memes unstoppable. South Park's parody solidified it all in the public's mind, leaving Rachel struggling to shake off the comedic punch. The studio might try to spin it, the cast might try to downplay the drama, but the internet rarely forgets. In the digital age, once a meltdown becomes meme-worthy, it's etched into the cultural zeitgeist. Will that add to the film's legend or doom it before it ever has a chance? Only time will tell. For now, the entire saga stands as a vivid reminder that when you attempt to alter a cherished legacy, you'd better be prepared for the tempest that follows, and pray your remake is magical enough to survive it.